here we go, grandiflora. Grandiflora is another one from that hybrid tea family. Basically a lot like a hybrid tea, only bigger. The shrub itself gets taller. Some of them are roof high. They can get really big. And then the flowers will be at least as big as a hybrid tea. For some of the varieties, they'll be even larger. I mean, just enormous blooms. It's beautiful. Again, beautiful, beautiful colors. Just some of the grandifloras can be nice and fragrant. Pretty much all of the different categories. This is a big one with roses. Everybody wants fragrance. When it comes to fragrance, you can hardly beat a rose. You get fragrance from all of the categories. It's basically some types will be more fragrant than others. So we get that question a lot: which types of roses are more fragrant? So it just depends on the exact variety.
Ella,
Yes.
grandiflora, are they short-stemmed, even though they're big blooms, compared to hybrid tea, which are long-stemmed?
Would you say they're probably close to the same?
Same.
Yeah.
Oh, the same.
Yeah. She was asking, are the stems as long as the hybrid tea? I'd say they're about the same. So they're still good for bouquets. It's just if you're going to be trimming roses off of this, you might be reaching up kind of high because some of them will be up there. Some of these grandifloras do get large. Yes. Oh, I can't hear you. Oh, okay. All right. Can you hear me okay, or is it just when I turn? Okay. I'll try to turn like this. Okay. Let's see. So that's the grandiflora. So those Floribunda hybrid tea and grandiflora are all kind of related to each other. And so their needs are very similar, especially when it comes to pruning and all of that. Very, very similar. Here, this is actually, they call this a carpet rose or a ground cover rose. It'll get maybe 1.5 feet high, that's it. Its habit is more like a shrub rose, more bushy. It's not something you're pruning down to like 3 or 5 canes the way you would with a hybrid tea. This is more of a bushy, low. You really love roses, but you don't want something that big. I need a flower for my border garden or a bed right in front of the door. I need something real small. That's where your ground cover comes in. Like the shrub, just covered in lots of small flowers. Yes? The ground cover roses, you're usually looking at approximately 1.5 feet tall, and then maybe 3 feet wide. Yeah, very low, more low and spreading almost. Not quite like a ground cover, but just a short, wider than tall mound of flowers, real pretty. And then of course the climbing rose, similar to what he brought in, that great big, where did he put it? Oh, here, it's over here. Again, they get real tall, but they tend to be kind of floppy. They can sometimes kind of spread on the ground if they're not actually trellised. Some of them just want to kind of creep all over the place. Generally with the climbing rose, you do have to kind of help it climb. So put up a trellis or something and kind of as it grows, weave it up. They're actually not natural climbers like vines are. So that's something you want to keep in mind, that they're not going to send out those little whips that the vines have and start climbing up. It's something you do want to help it weave a little bit. And then once it starts to get thick canes, it'll start holding up on its own. They'll kind of harden into that position. So that's the climber. They do get huge. They do get big. Of course, you can keep it under control with trimming, go at it every year, kind of prune it up a little bit, kind of apply some of the rules that you use for the hybrid teas. But as you can see, he let that one go. It was kind of in the back somewhere. He let it go, and they will get enormous. And then, of course, this one here has actually been trained this way to look like a tree. Usually these are either shrub roses or hybrid teas that they use for this. So there's like I said, just about something for everybody. This one is, I wish this was blooming so you could see it. This, if you like reds, oh, you have to see this in bloom. This is Chateau Merlot. Just gorgeous. Just gorgeous. This is a shrub rose, just covered in the prettiest little red roses. So like I said, there's a pretty much a rose for everyone. The final one that I wanted to point out is this one. This is called an iceberg. This is one of the thornless roses. They'll have a few thorns down near the base, and that's about it. So you can see there are a few thorns here, but after that, they're pretty much just thornless throughout the bush. And it's basically a type of shrub rose. So again, this is more dense and bushy, kind of makes a big mound, bush-looking thing, covered in roses. Usually the icebergs are not a bad size, actually. A lot of the shrub roses, they still have a nice size flower on them. So nice, beautiful flowers, come in some really pretty colors. The iceberg comes in, they've been making some new ones. I know there's pink, purple, white. I think they're working on some yellow, aren't they? No? Okay, I can't remember. They're coming out with new colors. I can't keep up. This one's the burgundy, which is a purple color. And so this one is going to be pretty much thornless, other than way down at the base where you don't really have to worry about it. So if it's thorns that's kept you away from roses, ask for an iceberg. All right.
I'm showing some new patio trees. That are
Sure.
Got some new patio trees coming in. They're half and half.
We got some really pretty pictures. Since nothing's in bloom yet, we might pass around the catalog a little bit.
Like this. And I've got the purple and white. We have the yellow and the purple, and the orange and yellow coming in. So that's what they're going to look like.
Yeah, some gorgeous colors.
So I'm excited.
Yeah, I get so excited when the roses come in. I love it, especially when they start blooming. Yes. A knockout rose. A knockout rose is a shrub rose, the type that is kind of bushy. The knockout earned its name well. It's a knockout. It blooms like crazy. Even for a shrub rose, it's just a gorgeous rose. It blooms like mad. The roses actually look a lot like hybrid teas. Normally the shrub roses have a more old-fashioned looking type of flower on it. The knockout actually looks more like a hybrid tea, but there's lots and lots of those flowers on the plant, and it's on a bushy shrub-like type plant. I actually planted one last year because they're just gorgeous. And those, again, they're increasing the colors that those come out in. I went for pink. I'm mad about pink, so everything's always pink, but they come in red and I believe white. Maybe that was the one I was thinking was coming out in yellow soon. I can't remember.
It is.
Yeah, yeah, I think that one's starting to come out in yellow now. I don't know if it's been released yet, but I want to say it's just about to be. So
What is the value of knockout roses? Is it because they bloom early and bloom late?
the value of the knockout, I would say their bloom time is about the same as other roses, which is a nice long bloom time. Again, what makes it stand out is the way the flower looks, because its flower looks more like a hybrid tea type flower, which is that classic rose that you see in a bouquet, instead of the old-fashioned rose, which is more of a fluffy petal type flower. The old-fashioned roses don't have that kind of spiral pointed middle. So this one will look somewhat similar to a hybrid tea, but instead of just a few roses on a few canes, you're going to see just a bush covered in flowers, the way you would see in a shrub rose. So it's kind of a little combination, but they really are gorgeous. When they come in, you'll see what I mean. They're really pretty. All right, any other questions about the types? Yes? How do you get a tree rose? Or do you mean how to train it or how to buy one? Well, you could try trimming it up. Usually they're grafted that way. What they do is they have to train this one stalk, And then what they usually do is, because in most cases, this is a good thing to go over right now, with the exception of, I think, the carpet roses and the shrub roses, but all of the hybrid teas are actually grafted. If you buy a rose bare root, they won't be grafted. The bare root anything just doesn't do well here in Arizona. We don't have the climate for it. But here we have very, very difficult soil. And so trees and shrubs that are grafted onto a rootstock that really does well in our type of soil, they tend to do better. So if you go through our tree racks, you'll notice they're all grafted. There's a graft at the bottom, like a kind of a knot, like a lopsided knot at the bottom. That's the graft. And what they've done is they've taken the tree that we want to see in the yard, and they've grafted it to a rootstock that can do really well in the soil. And they've grafted it on, and all of these roses are the same way. They're all grafted so that they do better. So here, in this case, most of these roses are grafted onto a rose stock called Dr. Huey. Dr. Huey is a red rose, not bad looking rose, but it just has a really strong rootstock, really good, does well in our soil. And so we take all these other roses and we graft them onto Dr. Huey. And so you'll see that they all have that same knot at the bottom. You can see here, the mulch kind of got a little deep here. You actually don't want to bury the graft usually, but there's always a knot down there. So these are all grafted. So in the case of the tree, what they've actually done is they've taken rootstocks that they've trained one stem on and trained it to be straight, and they have to support it with something, keep tying it as it grows, and then let it grow thicker. And then they usually, what they do is they just graft it up here, graft the new, whatever rose that they want to put on that stalk, they graft it up here is usually what they're doing. So they just train a whole bunch of root stalks with long trunks, and then they graft a whole bunch of different flowers onto them. Yes?
So in that example, how old is that one?
How old is that one? I think we're looking at a few years for that. Typically you can look, yeah, you can see this one, it's not real old. It's still got some green in there. The bark is starting to form in here. And this part will form bark, and that's okay. This part is the part you're going to prune when you're pruning a tree type rose. This is the part you're going to prune. You're never going to cut this part, of course, because they spent time training that. So you want to keep that, and your graft is up here. So this is the part you're going to prune, and you're going to have this nice ball of flowers, kind of like a topiary. Yes?
Once the graft is made, will that continue to still get taller?
No. The question was, when the graft is made, will this part continue to get taller? No, that part is pretty much done. All the growth is going to be up here. Even though they came from two different plants, they function as one. And so the growth is always at the top. Yeah. This is actually a very good question. And seems like I was thinking of something. What was it? Oh, well, I'll think of it in a moment. Any other questions? Yes.
I have several rose bushes, actually a dozen, and they were beautiful for several years.
Mm-hmm.
And then they started reverting to the rootstock, and it didn't matter how far I dug down to cut off these weird shoots, they would always come back.
Okay.
How do you avoid that?
So you're saying that you have stems that keep trying to come up from under the graft? There's not really a whole lot you can do about that. If it's coming from under the graft, cut it off, because that's not the rose that you wanted. That's usually Dr. Huey. It's going to be a red rose. There's not really much you can do about that in particular. Sometimes it's just going to do that. If it's really unusually bad, you might want to talk to someone here at Waters. Sometimes things will sucker more from the base when they're under stress, but it is something that they do normally, but sometimes it increases when they're under stress. So if it's unusual for a rose, you might want to talk to one of us and just make sure.
I noticed in this book on the Easy Elegance, it says bone root. Does that mean they are not grafted?
Yes, generally the shrub roses, the old roses, and the carpet roses they're not always grafted like the hybrid teas are. Those roses, though, they are just stronger because they're closer to, being an ancient rose. They're just stronger and sturdier, and they tend to need grafting less. And also because of the fact that most of them are shrub roses, they do have a tendency to grow their stems from the ground rather than from up above on older branches. So it's not really practical to graft them. You'll notice, I think we have some knockouts out there in our garden around the parking lot, and you can see how they grow, and you'll see that instead of one central trunk with stems coming out of it, you're seeing a bunch of stems coming out of the ground. That's just how the shrub roses grow. So that will be, if you have a shrub rose, that's just normal. They're all going to come from down low. Yes.
Can you say a couple words about how to care for them in the winter? I've heard about putting hay around
Okay.
them. I've heard about covers. And with this weather, it's been nice.
Yeah.
And it's cold. So I'm not sure what to do with the pruning.
The question is about winter care. What do you do with them in the winter? That's actually a great question. We live in the mountains. We do have winter. We're cold enough that you have to take winter into consideration. We're not as cold as some of the more northern states. So you don't have to go quite as far as you would in those places. They will sometimes, pack them in straw, like you were saying, wrap them up, really insulate them, insulate the ground around them. We don't have to go that far. We're not that cold. We don't have as much upheaval from the ground freezing either. So they're not that sensitive. It does help. What we do recommend the most is not to prune them until March. I know in warmer climates, many of you came from warmer climates, and you were in the habit of pruning in, say, fall. Maybe some of you came from Phoenix, California, places like that where it's a little warmer and you can just kind of prune in fall and leave it, and then it comes back in spring or even before spring because it's so warm over there. Here, what you want to do is you want to wait until your hard frosts are over, your hard freezes. Frost is okay, but those hard in the 20s kind of freezes, wait until those are over. Generally, they end sometime in March. So wait until those are over to do your pruning. And what that does is when you're getting hard freezes, the tips are where the branch will suffer damage or start dying back. And usually not die back, but they'll just kind of get weird colors. You could tell it's not perfect, it's not healthy as it should be, and it'll start at the top and kind of go down. You know what, let me take this one. This one has longer branches I can actually point to. Okay, so this one hasn't been pruned yet, obviously, but the damage will occur. You can see there's some little bits here. This was not a very cold winter at all. So I don't see a lot of discoloring on this one or anything. Same with most of my roses at home. They don't look that bad, but generally when you see damage, it'll start up here and kind of work its way in. And so when you're pruning, you're taking off all that damaged part. And then when you have it pruned down, if you get another hard freeze, it'll do damage again. But wait, if this gets damaged up here and then you have to cut that damaged part off again, well, now you're just about down to the graft and there's nothing left of your rose. And now you're really in danger of, either having a rose that's going to need a year to recover or maybe even damaging your graft. So you don't want to have that issue. You want to wait until all the damage has been done, cut it off all at once. A lot of times this time of year, everyone's really tempted because we get warm spells. January, February, we always get this nice warm spell, and you see the roses, they're starting to put out fresh little leaves, and there's maybe even some small stems, and you're thinking, oh, I gotta prune it right now. And you go and prune it, and you bring it down, and then it gets damaged, and now it's gone down further than you really wanted to. And I've seen people who did that, and then they were almost having to cut into the graft to get the damaged parts out. So you don't want to take it down that far. That's pretty severe. So let's go ahead and do you have a thanks, I forgot to bring those up. Thank you. I think I'm okay. All right, so let's say we wanted to tackle this with the pruners. And it's March now. I have permission to go ahead and prune this one. Amy knows that if we get a hard freeze again, that she needs to pull it indoors or something. This is in a pot, so she can put it in a sheltered spot if that becomes necessary, if we get into the 20s again. So we'll go ahead. Or he'll get a blanket. Yeah, that's fine too. Okay. So yeah, we're probably past most of the worst of it, but sometimes we do get a hard freeze, like mid-March. So that's why we do like to say March, preferably late March, really, to go ahead and do that. So when it comes to pruning, this seems to be the part that scares everybody. What do I do with the pruning? They're always afraid of doing something wrong. It's hard to do so much damage that you really kill the rose. Like I said, these things are really sturdy. The only thing we don't want to do is go all the way down to the graft, and then that might cause the rose to try to shoot all of its new stems out from under the graft. Well, that wouldn't do us any good, because then we'd all end up with a yard full of red roses when really what we wanted was pink or lavender or whatever. So that's why we don't want to prune until late, because we don't want to go all the way down to the graft. So right now, what I'm going to do, first I'm going to start by cutting out anything dead. You can see that one's dead, so I'm going to take that out. That one's dead. Anything that's discolored or damaged looking, that one's kind of icky looking, so I'm gonna go ahead and take that one out. This one's got a little bit of dead on it. It's got some. It's actually not severe, but it's got a little bit of discoloration in there. Yes. This one was I've forgotten. Oh, Honor. This is, I believe, a hybrid tea, right? Yeah. Honor is a white rose, just a beautiful, elegant white hybrid tea. Okay, let's see. So like I said, I want to start with taking out anything dead or damaged. Okay, I'll take that off. I want to take off anything that's growing inward, anything that's crossing branches that are almost right up against each other, that are too close to each other. I want to make sure there's plenty of space around each of these. This one's growing inward, so maybe I'll take that one off. Okay. We want things to kind of grow more out. We'll take that off. We've got a couple. This one's dead. I'm going to take this out. Okay. And also, while you're at it, go ahead and take off any leaves that are still hanging on from last year. Go ahead and clean all that up. In this case, I'm just going to, I already know that I'm going to bring this down a little bit, so I can go ahead and even take the tops off of some of these. I can take, anything like that off, things like that. Let's see. Over here, I almost can't see what I'm looking at because of all the leaves. Again, this one's growing inward. I think I'll take that one out. Try not to overthink it, because you could literally just stand here thinking, should I take that one off or should I not? Don't panic. It's a rose. You almost can't kill the thing, really. As long as you don't damage your graft, you're good. Okay, here is a perfect example of crossing. We don't want them crossing against each other, whether they're touching or not. Sorry, I'm trying not to cover the microphone, but whether they're actually touching or not, you don't really want them crossing like that. These are actually touching, so we'll go ahead and take some of those out. I think I'll take that one out, and kind of get things that are wanting to grow more naturally up and out in just a nice look. Okay, we'll take that one out. Let's see. These two right here, real close to each other. You can see they're maybe half an inch from each other. We'll go ahead and probably remove one of those. Since it seems like most of the branches are kind of leaning towards this side, looks like it was kind of growing towards the sun last year. We'll go ahead and we'll take this one out and give the other one some room to help fill in this area. So we'll take it from the thicker side. Whoop. Okay, there we go. All right. So yeah, let's see. Oh, thank you. I didn't realize that was blocking your view. Sorry. Do you need me to put any more down? Okay. Okay. You might have to review the video afterward. Yeah, take off all the leaves. Even if, now these you can see the leaves are dried, crispy. We've had enough cold weather lately that it's just crisped them up real good, but sometimes they'll still be green. Go ahead and take those off. And then what we're gonna do afterward is, well, not here in front of you because it's kind of messy, but what we would do afterward, after we're done with the pruning, is actually spray the whole thing down with horticultural oil or dormant oil. It's really just a mineral oil. You'll notice it's just clear, kind of like baby oil actually. And you mix that with water and spray the whole plant down, and that's going to take care of anything that has wintered over on this rose. Anything like eggs, aphid eggs are usually on the leaves. Let's get rid of those. Anything spider mite eggs. Ooh, spider mites are nasty little creatures. Super tiny, most people can't even see them. They can see something's wrong with the rose or with the plant, they get on everything, but they don't know what's wrong. Because the spider mites are so tiny, they're like the size of a grain of dust. But boy, do they do a lot of damage. Can't stand those things. Dormant oil, I have found, has been the best way to knock back spider mites on anything. They're really tough to kill, but dormant oil seems to do the best. Yes?
You use that on your fruit trees too?
Yes, you use dormant oil on your fruit trees, your roses, your spruces. I mean, I just fill up a tank and I go through and spray the whole landscape down. I love it.
And you need to do dormant oil, obviously with a name. Do you need to do it before stuff like
Yes, it's called dormant oil for a reason. The horticultural oil is a type of dormant oil that you get a little more season out of. It's something that really should be done during the dormant season for a couple of reasons. One of them is that the oil is kind of prone to burning on a hot day. So you don't want to be using it during the summer. This is something that is for use either during the cool season, say winter, early spring, fall, or in the case of shade plants and house plants, you get a little more leeway with it because they're not getting direct sun. I use it on house plants year round, but it's something that if hot sun hits dormant oil, it will burn. It will burn the leaves. So it's something that that's a one downside to it, just the one downside. I love it. It's not a toxin. Most pesticides are actually some kind of neurotoxin or something that actually poisons the insect or mite to death. In this case, it is simply a mineral oil, and it smothers them. They just can't breathe through it. And what's nice about it is that it works on eggs, because the other pesticides will not work on eggs. So you have the advantage of being able to spray this down during the dormant season, kind of near the end of the dormant season, and that's going to kill anything that is about to hatch out and cause a problem. Because some insects and some mites are really hard to kill when they're active, but the eggs, they can't get away from you. They can't run. Yes? Does the oil have any impact on javelina or any other kind of wildlife? No. It's simply a mineral oil. It'd be like I said, it's not even I don't think a very, very far cry from baby oil. So it's something that if wildlife were to eat something in your garden and ingest it, perfectly safe. You can use dormant oil on fruits, vegetables, anything. Again, it's not even a toxin. It smothers the insect. They actually breathe through their leg joints. And so the oil gets in there, and then they just can't breathe through it. And yes. Is it similar or the same as neem oil? Actually, no. Neem oil does have a natural effect on the development of the insect. It actually has something that it gets into their system and stops the body from growing, developing, molting, and they just die. That's why they don't die instantly with neem oil. You'll notice you spray them and then they keep wiggling for a while. Yeah. Oh yeah, we got a hummingbird. You know what? I'm not sure if someone brought it up. I'm not actually seeing it. The neem oil is up here. And neem oil, this one is less prone to burning, so this is something you can actually use pretty much year-round. Again, it doesn't work by smothering. It actually is technically a toxin. It's something that it's not toxic to us. It only harms insects. It is the oil of the neem tree, which grows in India and China. And the tree is developing this pesticide on its own to protect itself from insects. And it even has a repellent effect. The insects smell it and they don't want to get near it usually, but if they try, they have to deal with it. So the tree's natural defense is something that we have extracted and put in a bottle so you can put it on other plants. Yes? Can you use this instead of the dormant oil? You can. I would say, though, the dormant oil is more effective. Like I said, the worst part about the dormant oil is you can't use it in the summer. You can use the neem in the summer. So it's really more of a seasonal thing. The dormant oil really is it's something that is less selective. It really is very, very effective. I just wish I could use it year-round. It would pretty much eliminate all the other pesticides. You just can't use it year-round. So you use the dormant oil right now. And then that's going to kill anything that has wintered over on the plant. And then after that, if something flies in from somebody else's yard, that's when you start switching to other pesticides. That's basically how it works. I really have found that the dormant oil can get a wider range of insects than most pesticides. For example, the neems and the other pesticides don't seem to have quite as much of an effect on spider mites, for example. It doesn't seem to work as well on eggs. So things like that. I mean, they have an effect, but it's not 100%. The dormant oil is one thing I found that just really seems to hit 100%, knock out the entire population, so there's nobody left to lay more eggs and start a new cycle. So that's what I love about dormant oil. So can you tell I really love that product? And really, the great thing about it is you spray it once and it just eliminates and prevents so many more problems. It really does. Yes?
Are we too late in the season to use that right now?
To use the dormant oil? No, it's not too late to use the dormant oil. There's two different kinds of dormant oil. There's one that's called horticultural oil. That one is a little bit less prone to burning. So dormant oil, I think its limit is something like 65, 70 degrees. The old-fashioned dormant oil was a little heavier, more prone to burning. And so once it got that hot, it was stop, you can't use it. The horticultural, you get a little bit more leeway with it too. Worst comes to worst, if you used it too late and you burnt your leaves, in most cases the leaves will grow back, especially with roses. I would say try not to use it on evergreens that are slower about recovering with new leaves. Yes. Yes.
Now, let's say I use it and it rains the next day or the day after.
Great question. Let's say you use dormant oil and then it rains the next day. That's okay, because generally by then it's done the work. Everything's dead. So it's not something you have to worry about. Some pesticides, you put them on. Oh, thank you. She brought up the horticultural oil for us. So here it is. This is all seasons. All seasons, horticultural and dormant oil. It's not all seasons here because we have an unusually harsh climate. Our sunlight is more intense here because of our arid climate. But in some areas of the country, you actually could use this year-round because it's less prone to burning. Not here. Not here. Is it organic? It is a mineral oil. So yeah, it's not a toxin or something that was created in a lab. It's just a mineral oil. So it's good for organic gardening. I was still answering your question, which was, with other pesticides, you put them on and maybe they need time to work. And some of them, they actually continue working on insects that have flown in afterward. So yeah, they lose effectiveness when it rains. With this one, you put it on, anything that is already there gets smothered, it gets killed, it's done. After that, it doesn't matter if it washes off. And then the nice thing about that is that when things start blooming, for example, let's say you use this on your fruit trees, they're going to start blooming really soon. Some of them are starting to crack. Go ahead and use this right now. Do it before they fully open because the flowers, the petals would actually get kind of messed up by the heaviness of the oil. Do it right now. And then it'll dry on there, and then the bees will come along and pollinate your fruit trees, and they're not in danger. There's no lasting effect. So it's safe to use on fruit trees or anything that's about to flower, and you don't worry about your bees, you don't worry about your hummingbirds. We just had one just now hovering around the sage over here. Yes?
Another question. Could I put that on there now and then prune in 2 weeks?
If you wanted to do it that way, sure. She was asking, can I spray it now and then prune in 2 weeks? You actually could. We generally say prune first for 2 reasons. One, because you're not going to waste product on parts of the plant that you're about to cut off. And then also, because there's less plant in the way, you have a better chance of getting into all those little nooks and crannies because you're not trying to spray through a lot of branches and foliage, which if you're dealing with certain types of plants like evergreens, they keep their leaves and needles all the way through the winter. So there's a lot to have to try to spray through, and parts are more likely to get missed. So that's why we like to say prune first or trim first and then go ahead and apply. But yeah, if you're saying, oh, I really want to spray it now because I know that I'm about to have an issue, but I want to prune later, you could do that, yeah. And you could even, if you wanted to, even spray it again after you prune. That's okay too, yes. What's the shelf life on dormant oil? I don't know if it has one, actually.
So you can use a container 5 years old?
Probably. I would say open it up and take a look, since it's an oil. It's not something that normally, she was asking, what is the shelf life on dormant oil? With other pesticides, they might lose strength after some time has passed. This isn't a toxin, so you're not worried about that. It's an oil. I would say, open it up, look at it. Does it look like it's starting to congeal or look weird or something? But other than that, no, there's not really much that can happen to it. So no, you can try looking in the label, but I don't remember seeing anything in the label about that. So, all right. I think somebody else had another question, or did I get it? Yes.
How far down will you cut this?
How far down? We'll probably bring it down to probably around in here. We still need to finish pruning this. And here's some more that can be taken out. We might even have to finish this after the class because I think we've already gone through about almost an hour now. Yes? Yeah, go ahead and take off all the leaves, especially in this case, they're all dried out and gross. Take them off. The new ones, some of the new ones will actually come off when we finish pruning. Other than that, though, don't worry about trying to get these new leaf buds out. Just try to spray them real good. Make sure when you spray with the dormant oil, kind of shoot it in there to make sure that no insects are hiding inside those leaves. You want to make sure to get them. But to really remove these leaves, I'd actually have to tear off the whole leaf bud, and that's just too much. So don't worry about that part. Yes? Planting and feeding. Feeding is very important with roses. So planting, the first thing you're going to want to do is, I don't think we have a whole lot of time, so I'm going to kind of skim over the planting real quick. The planting is pretty much the same as you would do any kind of tree or shrub in this area. You want to dig your hole wider than the root ball. Don't try to plant your plant, whether it's a shrub, a tree, a rose, anything, don't try to plant it deeper than ground level. You should actually put the top of this root ball level with the ground. It's actually better for it to be higher rather than lower. Don't try to put things in a well. I know sometimes you did that in other states, and well, their climate gave you some leeway. You just won't get that kind of leeway here. You're going to have issues. So you want to, we actually have a planting guide. Make sure to ask for one on your way out. And if you have any questions about why something is done that way, go ahead and ask any one of us, and we'll go ahead and help walk you through it. You do want to amend your soil. We have terrible soil here, just awful. Amend it with the mulch, which I think is somewhere up front up here. Amend it with the premium mulch. That's what it's for. And you can also top dress with a little bit of that as well. For fertilizing, this right here, we actually make a fertilizer. There's a few here. This fertilizer, this is the one I personally use at home. I love this stuff. Really does great. It has the macronutrients in proper proportions. Here, because we made this fertilizer, we actually made it for here. We know what our soil lacks and what our plants need to survive here. This has everything. I know most brands have 50 different fertilizers. One for roses, one for orchids, one for shrubs, one for evergreens, one for deciduous trees, and they've got one for everything, right? That's usually not really necessary. If it's a really truly good food, it's got everything in there that the soil needs so that it can support anything that grows. So you look out in nature, in the forest or in the prairies and meadows, there's a lot of different things that are growing all together in the same ground on the same things. So this has a nice wide range of nutrients, so it's got everything that everything needs. Don't have a problem with that. Got the macronutrients. 744. You'll notice those numbers seem a little low. That's for a reason. It's because it's a natural product. When you open this up, it's not going to look like blue crystals or weird looking pellets. Then you can't tell what lab that was made in. It's actually just natural stuff. It's got cottonseed meal and guano and things like that. It's natural stuff. So because it's natural, it's actually more efficient than synthetics. And so natural products always have lower numbers because they work better. They don't have as much waste. This is actually going to go into the soil and enrich it. It's got macro and micronutrients. It's a complete meal. I love this stuff. This is all I use at home. You can, if you like, now this also is pH balanced for here. That's something that you're not going to get from most fertilizers. Most fertilizers are made for the East Coast. They're overly acidic over there. Not here. Here we're actually overly alkaline. Here the pH tends to run anywhere between 7 and 10. That's like practically sterile. That's not going to work. Yeah, plants want to be in the 6s. On the East Coast, they tend to be down like 4. And so they have to do things to bring that pH up. We actually have to bring our pH down. So this is something that is already acidic. If you're growing things that like acidic soil, blueberries, hydrangeas, azaleas, you don't have to buy 2 different fertilizers and 2 different soils for all the plants in your garden. They all have the same needs now. Because of our unusual pH, they all need to be acidified. Sometimes it's not enough to just use an acidic fertilizer. If that is your case, sulfur. Because if the pH is too high, the plant cannot absorb nutrients. and you'll see colors fading in your roses, fewer flowers on the bush, bush just not looking as healthy as it should be. That's where it all comes from. Yes? When do you fertilize? That does depend on the fertilizer you're using. In this case, 4 times a year. Generally they have to be done around the same time. So if you haven't already, go ahead and fertilize with this. I think I just did mine in February. So about every 3 months, reapply, because that's about how long it lasts in the soil. Because of the fact that it is natural, it's something that it breaks down at a natural rate, is how it works. After you prune, you do want to apply some kind of pruning sealer, because we do have cane borers here. So you want to seal the cuts. Anything larger than a pencil, seal the cut on those prunes so that cane borers don't get inside. And what they'll do is they'll bore all the way down to the graft, do serious damage to your rose. Lost a rose last year. That's why I ended up buying a knockout last year, because I lost a hybrid tea because I wasn't keeping up on my pruning sealer. Got the cane borer, and it just wreaked havoc. So it was still alive, but it was so ugly, and I spent a year trying to get it look pretty again, and I decided, you know what, this is taking forever, a year, 2 years, something like that. I can't remember how long I spent. Finally, I just said, I'm just going to start afresh because this thing is ugly. So I got a new rose, and I remembered my pruning sealer. Yes.
You said you could top dress your roses with some of your premium mulch. About how thick would you put that on?
Thank you. How thick should you top dress? Usually a couple inches is good. If you're trying to top dress something because you want to protect it from freezing, go with 4 inches, which is the most we ever freeze down. So for example, if you were going to put in a dahlia and you needed to protect that from freezing, the deepest we ever freeze down into the ground is 4 inches. So 4 inches of mulch would actually protect that. The main thing you really want to be careful with top dressing, don't have the mulch or whatever it is you're using to top dress, don't have it up against the bark of the trunk. This goes for any kind of tree or shrub. Don't have it up against it, because that mulch will be holding water and moisture up against that bark and would cause rotting, and that could kill your tree or shrub. So that's the main thing. Just don't have it up against it.
And that's because it's organic, it's not too rich to top dress with it?
It is just an organic product, this mulch, but it's not a nutrient-rich product. So it's something that you would still use fertilizer. You're not going to overdo it by adding that with fertilizer. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Can you use Epsom salt because it's max sulfate with roses?
Can you use Epsom salt? You don't really want to put too much salt into your soil, and we've already got enough occurring naturally. Some people will add that in some areas for magnesium. With our soil type, I just don't recommend it. I would say go with a fertilizer that is really made for this purpose, because it's got everything you want and it's coming from sources that are safer. The ingredients are less salty in this fertilizer. Some fertilizers, especially again the ones made in the East, tend to be real salty. Here we just don't have that loamy soil, so we got to be more careful. Okay, who's first? Okay, systemic, which is right here. This one right here is some people like this one because this is a good fertilizer. I mean, this one's definitely my favorite, but this one will get the job done, and it has a systemic insecticide in it, which means the plant will actually absorb the pesticide, and the plant itself becomes toxic to anything that tries to feed on it. So rather than trying to spray down your aphids, you could just use this, and the aphids just can't. They try to feed and it'll kill them. Yes? Could you use both? Yeah, you could kind of, Yeah, you actually could mix them, but I think if you tried to dilute this, it would lose effectiveness with the insecticide. What I would do in your case, actually, is get the systemic insecticide without the fertilizer and combine that with this. We do carry it without. We have 2 different packages. One is kind of a made for small plants and shrubs, and then the other one is more concentrated for really big shrubs and trees. Yes? Okay.
What happens if you over-fertilize?
What happens if you over-fertilize? You can overdo it. And just like us, if we overeat, we're going to have problems. The nitrogen would burn the leaves. You would actually see burns. The leaves just turning brown, crispy. It looks like they got scorched. The phosphorus and other things, Actually, phosphorus is hard to really overdo. It's not impossible, but it's hard to overdo it. Potassium is more for the strength and immunity of the plant. So there are things that, it's possible. But the nitrogen is the main one that you would go. Yes?
How species specific is the fertilizer with insecticide? So you have some like trimming roses for you?
Okay, this is something, it's going to make the plant toxic. If your goats have a tendency to get into your rose bushes, no. Yeah. Stay with one of the others. This one would not harm them. This is a watering type. This is the kind that you mix in with water. It's a soluble. This has if you're having issues with things not blooming or not blooming as much as you want, and you want to boost your phosphorus count, phosphorus is that middle number on your macronutrients. That's what causes blooming. If you ever need to boost that, especially if you're in a hurry to do it, this is the best stuff. We used to have someone who worked here, her name was Dawn, and she says, this stuff will make your hat bloom. Yeah, this stuff is strong. So it's got it's fast acting. Most of the things that you could add for phosphorus, most of those supplements are kind of slow acting. You put it on and you have to wait either weeks to months for them to kick in. This is something that goes to work right away. So this is something that if you're needing to punch up that bloom power, flower power is the one that's going to do it.
What are the 3 numbers?
The 3 numbers. First one is nitrogen. Nitrogen is for green leafy type growth. Second one is phosphorus. That is, again, is for blooming and also for rooting. So that's important for things that are having to recover root strength. And then the last one is potassium or potash, and that is for strength and immunity.
What are the numbers on that one?
This one is 105410. Again, this one actually is a synthetic, so you'll notice the number's a little higher than on here. Again, naturals are just more efficient, so that's why they always have lower numbers, but they'll still get the job done, believe me. But you can use these in conjunction. So if you wanted to use this, because this is a really good high nutrient, not just these 3 are macronutrients. There's also more micronutrients in there. That's kind of like the difference between your proteins and your carbs, and then vitamin C and things like that. That's the difference between the 2. So this is really going to keep things really healthy. But you could, if you want, supplement with a little bit of this to kind of punch up that bloom power if you're needing it.
Hey, Ella, did you explain how to plant? Just what size hole?
I had to kind of skim over it because I was getting the you're running overtime signal from the back. Yes. Yeah, so after the class, what we are going to have to do is kind of answer questions and go over that a little bit. And it is something we go over in other classes as well. So you pick any class, we'll probably go over it.
I would like you to do, you're our planting person.
Okay, absolutely.
You're in the field, you see the soils.
Yes.
I would love to capture that on film.
Okay.
Just explain that. Go in depth. Take 5 minutes.
Okay.
Tell them the 3 things. And go in depth. Size and water.
Okay.
You're going to put a new or shrub or vine or whatever.
Absolutely.
How would they plant it? How would you plant it for them? You're coming to their yard.
Okay, so if we go into planting, and planting and watering really are very important. The first thing you want to do, we're going to plant, like I said, we're going to dig our hole about 2 to 3 times as wide as our root ball. So here we go. You know what, I'm going to use this one because it might be a little bit easier for you to see where the soil level actually is. So we're gonna dig our hole wider, 2 to 3 times wider than the root ball, but no deeper. The soil level, if you can't see it, is right about here. So right in there, that's your soil level. So this should be level with the ground. You can actually go higher, not lower. Part of that is our soil, part of that is our monsoon. We have very dense clay in most cases, and then we have, which really retains water really bad, and so you'll lose aeration and drainage if you go too low. Then the monsoon's going to come and inundate you with rain, and it's going to wash dirt and mulch and whatever's nearby, especially in sandy areas, but also the clay areas. It'll all wash into your well, fill that up, and rot it. I think I had gone over that a little bit, but you don't want to go low. Always keep it either level or even higher. Some plants, I found I really have to go higher. Some of you live in areas like Eastern Prescott Valley, Dewey, Prescott Lakes. I find that in those areas, the clay is just impossible. It doesn't want to drain during monsoon. You'll actually have standing water in your soil. Sometimes in those areas, I do have to plant higher so that the plant is up out of the water. So I'll actually build the mounds. So maybe I'll dig the hole maybe only halfway deep, put the plant in there, or maybe even less, and then put the root ball in there and build the soil up to it. And that allows the water to drain away when there's too much because of our monsoons. It allows it to breathe better. I have had cases where people have come to me and they said, I've got trees over here that are dying and trees over here that are fine. What's the difference? Are these on a mound? Yes. The ones on the mound are the ones that are surviving, and these over here are just drowning and dying. So you'll see that a lot, especially in the eastern side of Prescott Valley and Dewey. It's kind of the same all over, but those are the areas that seem to have the most trouble. I almost always have to mound when I'm over there. It's pretty bad. So so after you do get that hole dug, you're going to take that soil that you had dug out, and you want to mix it with that premium mulch. A lot of people come to me and say, well, the soil's so bad, shouldn't I just replace it? Well, here's what's going to happen. You've dug a hole, say, yay big, but sooner or later, the roots have to grow outside of that. And they're going to go, ugh, what is this? I don't want to grow into that. I'm just going to spiral around like I'm in a container. So what you want to do is create a transition zone. Take the native soil, mix it with the mulch. The mulch will make it easier for the plants, which have been in this nice, really comfortable potting soil. They'll be able to transition into that because of the mulch, and then get used to that native soil. And then when they go outside of the hole that you dug into that, then they'll be able to make that transition. So you don't ever want to replace your soil. You actually want to just amend it and let the plant get used to it. It's got to get used to it sooner or later.
So what would be the ratio?
What is the ratio? It's 1 part mulch to 2 parts native soil. You'll find that clays will eat it up faster than sandy soil. There's one little tiny area of town that actually has sandier soil. Not so sandy that it tends to dry out too fast. Not that sandy, but you'll find that if most of us have clay, and boy, it just takes plenty of that mulch to get that ratio because it's so dense. Yes? How do I feel about square holes? I don't see a necessity in it. Generally, what you want to go for is a bowl-shaped hole because it allows the roots to grow in the way that they need to, because we do have a hard pan a couple feet down, hopefully. For some of you, it's sometimes even higher. Sometimes you get lucky and it's maybe even 3 feet. Basically, the roots are going to have to grow sideways. So you want a hole that's wide and sort of bowl-shaped, and the roots will be able to grow the way that they're going to have to for the rest of their lives.
When you take your mulch, 1 part to 2 parts,
Mm-hmm.
you blend that up.
Mm-hmm.
How do your backfill?
How do I
Step
backfill?
on that, do you mound that, do you air, how do you put it?
Yeah.
air, what are you doing?
So we're going to fill that hole. Just, yeah, thank you. There's so many things that I do when I'm doing it, but I have to remember to explain it. So when you put that amended soil back into the hole, you do want to pack it down. Put all your weight on it. Get the heaviest guy in the house out there, stomp on it. You can't overdo it, don't worry. Only nature can compact it to an extreme degree. You can't do it. You do want to pack it down, get all the air holes out of there. Otherwise, what's going to happen is it's just going to settle and expose your root ball, and, well, that didn't do any good. So go ahead and pack that down. And make a little moat around it. You can use berms, but be careful. The berms will sometimes break down and start filling in around your trunk against your bark. So if you do that, you kind of have to be careful. Make sure it's not doing that. Knock them out when you stop using the berm. Knock them outwards. I kind of prefer to go with moats because then you don't have that danger. Again, no wells. No wells. I've seen many trees die because they were planted in wells. If they had simply been put at ground level or higher, they would have been fine, but they rotted sitting in this well. And that well also funnels rainwater in too, and they just drown. So no wells. Yes.
What about containers for roses? Do they do
Cont-
well in containers?
Roses do great in containers. Absolutely. Yes.
Bring them in the winter?
No, you don't have to bring them in. I have mine in containers here in Prescott, and I have no problem at all. Yeah, go ahead, put them in containers. Use the potting soil. Works great. Watering, I find most people tend to baby the roses a little too much with the water. Don't worry, you don't have to be watering them like a petunia. It's not like a hanging plant where it's going to dry out really fast. Our soil, even in the sandier part, actually holds water wonderfully. Even when it's hot and the air is dry in June and it's miserable, you'd be amazed how well our soil retains moisture. So deep soaking. That clay does have trouble absorbing enough water. It can really take all you can give it. So just nice, deep soaking. And then usually once a week at the very most is all you really have to water your shrubs of any kind here. So you don't have to be watering 3 times a day or 3 times a week or anything like that. I've actually seen people water twice a day. You don't have to do that. Yes?
If your plants were planted in a well, does it make good sense to try and undo the well?
If the plant has already been done in a well and it's not practical to dig it up and redo it, then yeah, you're going to have to check it on a regular basis. Keep it clear. Dirt and stuff is going to settle in there. Old leaves or needles or whatever are going to settle in there. You're going to have to pull that out. And in some cases, you may even have to trench it. I've actually seen that where that was necessary. Someone actually had to dig a trench out from there so that the water that gets funneled in from the rain has somewhere to drain out, because if it's a small plant like this, if it hasn't been in there that long, it may actually be worth it just to dig it up and redo it. Yeah, I've seen trees that were just too big to do that, and then they were having issues. We actually had a case a couple years ago. Several trees were dying because we'd had a few years where we had really poor monsoons and the trees were doing okay. All these trees that had been planted in wells, they were doing okay. And then we got a real monsoon, like a half-decent monsoon where we were getting rain every day, and all those trees died off. So we saw a lot of 4-year-old trees die the year before last because of that.
We love replacing trees for competitors. They'll call us going, died, and so we go and replace them. This is root rot every time, so it's just, I can name the competitors, but I won't.
Yeah.
But it's, Ella knows her stuff. I'm just amazed at the junk you bring back. Because we don't leave it on site. We dig the hole and rocks and boulders. And It's ridiculous what that jackhammer and digging bar will dig out, and then you amend that.
Yeah.
Try to screen it down and amend it from there. But Ella, virtually never. And Jared, raise your hand. There's our planting team right there. So we got the tag team, at least here in the class, here. So there are folks that take the trucks and roll around and deliver your plant for you. So if that's of interest, it's there for you. I did line up one planting while you were teaching the class. He wanted to talk to you, but he was busy.
Okay.
How can I help you? I'm the owner. So I was acceptable. If we had to deal with someone, okay. I would say for my own roses, I've got some that are in containers. Minimum size container for a rose for me, about that big around, about 14 to 18 inches. About the same depth. Yeah, about like that. I've got some that have grown in there. I've got a shrub rose, been in there for 5 years. I mean, so long I can't remember. I almost neglect it. It blooms and it's very consistent. Raised beds, roses are going to love that. And I have, most of my roses are in the ground. So I treat them like a tree or a shrub or a vine. I put them on the same system as my trees and shrubs. They water about once a week, like Ella was saying. They're doing great. I did just finish all of my pruning. So I've got a few more carpet roses to finish up, but they're pretty well done. I won't do a lot with them, but pretty much my pruning on roses is done, especially since I brought that huge chunk to show off from sort of the class. I did just fertilize all of my roses with this all-purpose plant food. This is my first one. I'm your friend. We're just neighbors talking across the fence. It's what I did. I fertilized this, and I put soil sulfur. That's what I do. I personally don't like to use the systemics because I'm a bird gardener. I love hummingbirds and butterflies, and I just don't know. We're getting some mixed results with, are we killing off the bees with systemics or are we not? We actually don't know. Well, if we don't know and the scientists are putting this much energy and weight into it, it seems to me like I shouldn't use it if I don't have to. If I do get into a rose that's just really a problem, I find that aphids and thrips love blue. They just love blue and light-colored lavender flowers. It's like their favorite, purples. There, I might use a systemic on just that rose, but as a general rule, I use the all-purpose food, and I get tremendous fragrance. Cottonseed meal in that, that's the main ingredient, really brings the fragrance out. And then the sulfur makes the color happen. I only do the sulfur once a year. In the spring, that's it. I got the big bag, not the small bag, and I did everything in the yard, not just roses. This is a rose plants. I got rosarians here. I would especially do my roses. Anything that blooms is what I would do. Now I'm praying for rain. So it just happened last week. I put it down. I was hoping for more rain with that last event. We didn't see that much. It looks like there's a storm coming that will have even more moisture. Now is the time to do it. So the month of March, sometime in the month of March, fertilize. And then next weekend, I want to make sure, Cheryl, could you help me hand those out? Unfortunately, you plan these things months in advance. We've got our 56th spring open house next weekend. 56 years. Back in 1962, Harold Waters started the first spring event. That was my father-in-law, so Lisa's dad. We've been doing this 56 years now, and we planned this thing going, okay, it's the spring hits next week. Let's have a spring event. Looks like a snowing event might happen that weekend. We'll see. Just part of it is for us to get the nursery ready in time for spring. That first nice day out in spring, it just goes nuts. Full on spring. So we'll have our growers in. You can talk to the guys. I got a friend of mine from Tucson. He breeds plants. He finds new plants, gets a patent on them, and then introduces them into the marketplace. He lives in Tucson. He's a friend of mine. He'll stay at our house. He's right here. You can talk directly to Chris all weekend long. It's fascinating. He's actually personable, too. A lot of the plant folks are kind of nerdy. They don't get out of the greenhouse much. They're here, too. I've got a Patty with Growell. She helps me formulate all of our soils. So we've been perfecting these recipes for a lot of years. She'll be here potting up the folks, giving out samples of potting soils. If you've got a container, bring it with you. She might even fill it for you and help you plant it. So she's going to bring a bunch of samples and stuff. She'll be here Saturday, mainly. That's spring open house next weekend. Please join us. Our 56th year. Rain, sun, or snow, it doesn't matter. We're going to have it. We'll just have it under the greenhouses if you need to. And that's what they hand out going around. It's just an invite. With that, I want to ask Cheryl one question. You're the silent, brilliant nerd over there with those plants.
Yes.
What is your favorite rose?
All of them.
Give me one. If you had to name
I like
one.
the old
Mr. Lincoln Double
Lincoln,
Delight.
oh, okay. Fragrant Cloud, all those
Yeah,
classics.
and we've got a
Price
bunch of new
Material.
ones coming this year. I haven't smelled them yet, but I picked them because it said it smelled good.
She actually personally hand goes through and does her favorites and then adds a new one. So Cheryl's our go-to, and then
I've got
and
the
then-
catalog up here and
Oh.
what's coming in.
Okay, so if you want to see what's coming in, here it is. So that's great. And with that, please give a big round of applause. I love that. Sharing the stage with us.